Hi, everybody. If you're watching, thank you for joining us. My name is Heather Thorstensen, and I am the Manager of Communications at Sigma Xi, the Scientific Research Society based in Research Triangle Park, North Carolina. And today we're going to be talking with Michael Stevens, who is the creator and host of the YouTube channel Vsauce. Vsauce is an educational channel, and it tackles interesting questions relating to science, math, geography, history, a lot of different topics. And Stevens this year is an honorary member of Sigma Xi. He's going to be at our annual meeting in Glendale, Arizona, November 6th through 9th. And so we're going to be taking questions during this Hangout. If you have a question for Michael, you can put it over on the right side of your screen here, and I'll be looking at that and taking your questions as we go. You can vote on those questions if you see one that you like to get it up to the top. We're also going to be live tweeting during the Hangout with @Sigma Xi Society, and we're going to be using the hashtag SciCommSX. It's hashtag SciCommSX. So feel free to tweet along with us as we get going here. So welcome, Michael. Thank you for joining us on the Hangout.
Yeah, thanks for having me here.
And I wondered if you could start by talking a little bit about the videos that you make on Vsauce. I saw you had a new video posted just this morning called "What is the Earth Worth?" So give us an example of the videos that Vsauce works with, and as well as the other channels that you have in the Vsauce network.
Yeah, sure. So some classic examples of Vsauce videos would be, what color is a mirror? What if everyone jumped at once? Would Earth change its axis? And they're really silly sounding questions, but if you really look at the kind of physics behind them, not only do people want to know the answers and love sharing them, but you can accidentally teach a whole lot of stuff by beginning with the funny question. And the video that just came out this morning is a hilarious question. What is the Earth worth? What does it even mean to try to put a price tag on Earth? But it allows me to talk about supply and demand of Earth. How many exoplanets have we found? To talk about the Kepler space mission, to talk about what we know about the Milky Way and what we don't know. So that's basically what I do about 2 or 3 times a week. There are 2 other Vsauce channels creatively titled Vsauce 2 and Vsauce 3, and they are run by different guys with slightly different focuses. Vsauce 2 is about technology and human achievement, and the 3rd channel does what I do, but for fictional things. So what if Superman punched you? How many newtons of force does he have in one punch? Based on, you know, the comic books, and Jake does a great job weaving together. Let's teach all about sound by doing a Skyrim video game science breakdown video.
Nice. I saw that your new video this morning, soon after it was posted, it already had 300 views, and I noticed also that you guys have surpassed 7.7 million subscribers just on Vsauce. And so I was wondering what it is that you think make your videos so popular and drive people to you guys.
I think first of all, we've been doing it for a while. You know, it doesn't happen overnight. So I've been working on Vsauce for 4 years. So it's not like, oh, you make a couple viral videos and now you've got 7 million subscribers. It took me a long time to get into a rhythm. It took me a long time of trying things out to get better and better at what I do. And what makes the videos popular, I think part of it is that they provide answers and explanations very succinctly, very well, it's sort of social ammunition, right? It's a whole bunch of great things to bring up at a dinner party, but at the same time, the videos are packaged with titles that make you want to click them. You'll see a video that is just a yellow square. That's the thumbnail poster frame image, and the title is "This is not yellow." And you go, well, now I have to click it. What do you mean that's not yellow? And then you click, and now you're in, and you learn all about how computer displays work and how they produce yellow if they only have red, blue, and green pixels, right? So a lot goes into figuring out how can I bring in a lot of people. And during the episode, how do I make sure to cover topics from many, many different angles so that no matter who the audience member is specifically, there's a hook there that's going to grab them. So I won't just talk about the history of discovering microorganisms, I'll talk about who the people that found them loved, where they lived, what life was like when they were around. So you wind up catching different interests for all different types of audience members.
Okay, and we just got a question from somebody watching the Hangout, and they said they're wondering how much time it took you to do the research for your last video, What is the Earth Worth?
That's a great question. So that was a tough one because what is the Earth worth is such a big question. And I didn't want to just say, well, the History Channel says it's worth this much, and this guy says it's worth this much, so, there you go, bye-bye. I wanted to come up with, what's the big deal? What's the final thing, so that you can say the next time someone asks how much you would make if you sold Earth, you could point them to my video, and there's like a real concluding sort of thought to leave you with. And that took, I would say it took maybe, well, it took 2 weeks. That's how long it took between episodes. But I also flew back from London to LA in the middle of that, and I'm working on some other projects. So I would say it took maybe 6 or 7 days of research, and then another 2 days or 3 days of writing, and then a day or two of production and editing. I mean, I'm in an apartment in Santa Monica right now, and I shot just upstairs in the little loft area with a carpet draped over a clothes hanger thing for soundproofing in my background. Really lo-fi, but I think that brings us to the point of how democratized YouTube has made the ability to make videos and to reach a big audience. I don't have to have a huge studio and a crew. I can just go upstairs and turn on my camera and talk to lots and lots of people about things that I think they should know.
Yeah, and I watched a video of you where you once said that you are the only person making the Vsauce videos. There is no crew, it's just you. Is that still the case?
Yeah, during production, it's only me. I was lucky enough almost a year ago, almost exactly a year ago, to have found an editor named Guy, and he lives in London. And the way it sort of works is that we'll spitball ideas, he'll find some cool things and investigate whether or not a topic's going to be cool. And then I write up the script and film it, then give him the footage, and he does a first pass on visualizing a lot of the things I talk about. And then I'll take it, finish it off, and then it goes out onto YouTube. So having him help with the editing has helped me, and as we get better and better at working together, I'm hoping that it will increase the number of videos I'm able to make every month.
Okay. And so, like I said in the intro, you're an honorary member for Sigma Xi starting this year, and that's because many of your videos address science topics. And I was wondering if you could talk about why science communication is so important to you.
It's really important to me because first of all, it's sort of just woven into who I am. When I started making a show online, it was about video games because that's what I was asked by the company I worked for at the time to do. But it wasn't sustainable because I'm not good enough at video games and I don't know them well enough. But what I did know were explanations for things. I could talk your ear off about why hot peppers are hot. And that kind of scientific mentality, that understanding of what makes something science and what makes it pseudoscience, and an interest in knowing what makes an explanation sound reasonable or not, and also just how cool it is to be curious. Because if you really think about it, the fact that hot peppers are hot is kind of weird. Why are they? Why don't other plants that we eat have that kind of defense mechanism? And the more you start learning about things, the more you get mind blown by them. So I just kind of like having that experience, and it's what I'm like in my normal life if you just hung out with me. That's what the episodes are. You're kind of getting to hang out with me. And by doing the episodes in that kind of way, it made them really sustainable because it's just who I am.
Okay. We have another question from somebody watching, and the question is, how often do you consult with experts in the relevant fields you're covering?
So I talk to a lot of really, really smart people, and I mean, it's for every episode, and who I talk to can vary a lot. I'm really in debt to some of the other educational YouTubers out there. So, take a look at the random video. I had to talk to Derek from the channel Veritasium about that a lot, and he was talking to people who were in mathematical fields and we kept debating over what really is random. Does it need to have a uniform distribution, or can it just mean that we don't know how to predict it? And we'd have to go back and forth. The thing is, a lot of my questions and a lot of what I cover is more about thinking scientifically than it is straight up about, like, I have the most accurate answer for the mass of the sun. Here you go. It's more like, you know, what would happen if we tried to put the sun out with water, you know? And I'll go into the physics of something as big as the sun, and I'll have to talk to people who work in quantum physics, or work, in that case, I had to talk to someone who knew about nuclear reactions, and you know, adding mass, adding water, wouldn't that just make it hotter at that scale, and all these types of things. So I mean, it's very important that everything be double, triple checked, and by talking to actual scientists who are doing the super cool work, you know, I'm just highlighting what they do. Talking to them is really important. So yeah.
Okay. Well, that kind of goes into the next question. We know that some of our members at Sigma Xi are interested in helping the public's understanding of science. It's part of the Sigma Xi mission. And I'm wondering what you think scientists can do to help improve the public's understanding of science.
Well, like I said, with the internet democratizing public outreach, you can do a lot of things. And it doesn't just have to mean make a YouTube show and be like comfortable on camera. I think that what we see on forums, what we see in the comment sections on pop science articles, and also what happens on websites like Reddit, where the public can all kind of come in, and a comment system, a sort of public forum has been built that's actually quite awesome. You know, by joining those types of communities and lending your expertise, your voice, I think you can add a lot. I mean, I'll tell you, the Ask Science subreddit on reddit.com is full of some really, really smart people, and very reasonable and very inspiring. You know, they're not being paid to do this. But what they are doing is they're helping answer people's questions, and they do it in a very, very clear and fair way. So I would say, get involved. You know, if you have the time, get involved online, and find what medium's right for you. I mean, if it's making video, then perfect, do that. Let's collaborate. But if it's writing a blog, or just responding to blogs, that's really valuable. I mean, a lot of times these popular science articles are written by someone who has access to the actual published paper, but the public doesn't. They don't have a subscription to that service, and the public has to just hope that the journalist writing the article got the correct gist of the article. So, you know, often reading the comment sections is where you'll find the most reasoned skepticism or explanation of what the article is actually about.
Okay, that kind of goes into my next question, which is, say there is a scientist who wants to get involved and they want to join these communities, or they want to write these blog posts. You have a way of explaining things in your videos that is really drawing people in and helping people understand science, and that's why people watch your videos and why so many people are subscribed to Vsauce. What do you think that you do in your videos that scientists could apply to what they might put in a blog post or a Reddit community, as far as the way they get their message across that could really help people?
So I think some of the best advice I ever heard about this was from CGP Grey. I don't know if you guys know him from YouTube, but he lives out in London, and he's great. And he said, look, when you explain things, you should not okay, let me make sure to get the quote right. Overestimate their knowledge, but underestimate their vocabulary. So don't treat them like they're dumb, but they don't always know what words you're throwing out mean. And I see a lot of people communicating science just throwing out inertia, this particular law, this one, blah, blah, blah. And it's good to take a step back and to say, look, is everyone watching really going to know exactly what buoyancy means? And taking the time to show what buoyancy is to get to your other point is very important. And sometimes it takes time. I mean, my episodes are like 10 to 13 minutes long, but I always listen to that advice. that he gave, because I think making the content accessible requires respecting the audience, overestimating how intelligent they already are, but underestimating their vocab, meaning really getting back down to fundamentals, so you don't lose anybody.
Okay. So we have some more questions coming in from the audience. One question is, who is the expert that you were the most nervous to meet?
Um, well, let's see. I was really nervous when I met Neil deGrasse Tyson, and this was like 2 years ago in New York. I hadn't really prepared anything, you know. I just wanted to be able to talk to him, and he showed me around his office. He had at the time a lamp that was the planet Saturn, and you pushed its rings and the lamp would turn on. And he said that he built it when he was a kid. I was really nervous to meet him, and the video footage that was recorded of that event was all shaky, so it was not even really usable. But we talked especially about how long it takes a photon to leave the sun. I was really fascinated, and still am, by that fact. The stars are so dense, photons bounce around sometimes for millions of years before they even actually leave the star and start flying through space. And so we talked about a lot of those mind-blowing things that people don't even talk about enough. And sure enough, we're going to start talking about them, and you know, in 5 years we're all going to be tired and say, yeah, well, everyone knows that.
Okay. Another question that we have is, what are your favorite, most influential YouTube channels along the lines of science and skepticism?
Yeah, great question. So everything Brady Haran makes, I love. I love the scientists that he features. Um, his channels are channels like Periodic Videos, 60 Symbols. Those channels are the perfect example of scientists getting involved and taking advantage of what YouTube has to offer to reach more people. Brady Haran is a journalist from, used to be at the BBC, and now he's taking a camera around the University of Nottingham, and he's asking physicists and chemists questions like, why is glass transparent? And they just go off explaining the answer, and then Brady edits that together into an episode. And his channels are incredibly popular, and I've been lucky enough to meet a lot of the people that he's featured in his episodes up in Nottingham, and they're just the most wonderful people, you know, and their ability to synthesize questions that I have and help explain and answer things to me is just, it's second to none.
Okay, we have another question that says, did you actively promote yourself all along, or was it just the creativity and a slow building of your popularity that led you to do the critical mass so necessary to stay relevant on YouTube?
Yeah, that's a great question, and I marketed myself. I don't know how to phrase that, but I did that a lot. Collaboration was a big part of it. Working with people who already had audiences online, who already had YouTube subscribers, working with them so that they could tell their audiences that I existed, and then just sticking with it, so that when someone finally found something I made, they were encouraged to go back to the channel and see, oh, he's done a few more like this. So it took a while, but yeah, I worked with other YouTube creators, collaborated with them, and I also had a whole list of blogs that I would email every time I did a new video. And I would email them like a personal email about, hey, this is cool, your audience might like this, your readers might like this. And I did a lot of that sort of self-promotion, making sure people knew that what I was doing. But when I collaborated, I didn't just collaborate with people who were exactly like me. I collaborated with comedians, you know, really any kind of channel that I knew or that I, you know, could get involved in, because people like all kinds of things. People who love to learn about optics and what color a mirror is also like to laugh. So, you know, I would say don't do it alone. That's my advice.
What about other types of social media? Are you finding a lot of success with driving people to your videos, or even just engaging with people on Twitter or Facebook, Instagram?
Yeah, so I didn't join Twitter until Vsauce was already like a year old. That's how slow I am to adopt new technology. But I love how different the conversations are. The conversations that you have on Twitter versus on YouTube versus on, say, a subreddit are incredibly different, and being involved in all of them as much as I can makes a big difference and allows me to see all the different types of viewers Vsauce has. So yeah, I would recommend, if you're familiar with those different types of social media, focusing on just one or two that you think you particularly get or are good at or have fun using. For me, it was definitely Twitter, and now Instagram I really like. It's fun to be able to just send a quick image, but also an update about what's going on and a hello to your followers.
Okay. Another question from the audience is, do you have any recent videos that turned out really differently from what you expected?
Yes, all of them. People ask me, hey, Michael, so what's your next video about? And I'm like, I can tell you, but you're going to be disappointed because what you finally see is not going to be what I'm going to tell you today. Episodes change all the way up until I'm done filming them. Even while I film, I might say, you know what? I am not going to say that way, or I'm going to move this. In fact, do I have a script? Ah, shoot, I don't have a script with me. But I could show you that even once I've printed the script out, this is a script, but it's not one that I've marked on. So on the script, I take a pen and I just move everything around, and I go, okay, the thing about whether or not animals can own copyright on their selfies, move that to the front. No, move that back, and they wind up being all full of scribbles. But yeah, this is part of the process, by the way. I print the paper script off, and then I walk around with it, and I memorize chunks at a time, and then I get natural at it and record that chunk and go back and repeat. What was the question? Sorry, I got distracted by all the
The,
script mess that's around me.
the recent video that turned out differently than you expected.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So they all do, and even the title. Like for a while, my newest episode was going to be called Animal Selfies, which is a great title and would have been a great thumbnail. But I realized that really what this episode was mainly about was valuing Earth. Very rarely do I stick with the title the entire time unless the title really is just a great question. Like, why do we clap? Why do we wear clothing? That kind of stuff. But for the most part, I don't even know where it's going to go until I'm done talking to all the different experts that I need to, reading all of the different books that I need to, and doing research online, and then saying, okay, I knew I wanted to do something about quasars. Now, after a week and a half of reading, what are the 12 things about quasars or that I found about anything during the research that I think are the biggest chill bump moments, the moments that will make people go, whoa, I have to tell my friend that right now, or I have to tweet that out right now.
Okay. Another question that we have is, what were the circumstances that convinced the Vsauce channel was enough to sustain you and it was time to quit your day job?
Well, Vsauce was always my day job. Yeah, plot twist. Because I worked at Next New Networks at the time, which was a company in New York that produced online video. And I worked for Barely Political, which was a political comedy channel at the time. And they said, okay, cool, Michael, could you do a channel about video games? And I said, okay, I guess I could do that. I used a random name generator to come up with the word Vsauce, which I liked a lot more than the other recommendation, which was that I call the channel Video Game Nation. That could have been what Vsauce was called, and that's what makes Vsauce such a useful name. It can become whatever it needs to. It can become whatever the channel naturally became. So yeah, Vsauce was always my day job, and that was incredibly lucky. I mean, I didn't have to worry about finding time to work on the channel because I was supposed to. It was my job. And by putting that much work into it, I was able to build it up and make it sustainable quickly. So, I think that's why you find on YouTube some of the most passionate people in the world on all kinds of topics. Because in order to build an audience there, you have to not only have the time, but you have to have the passion, and you have to be willing to put a lot of work into it. But once you do, it pays off.
Let's talk a little bit about the topics that you pick. Do you pick them based off of what's interesting to you? Do you get feedback from your viewers, or do you really try to think about what is popular in the what's popular in society and what might draw people in?
Yeah, I would definitely recommend looking at what's popular in society because it takes me a couple of weeks, maybe like a week, week and a half to get episodes done. It's hard for me to be super topical. Plus, the topical space is pretty crowded. I mean, when everyone's talking about, oh, the moon's going to be a supermoon tonight, you can bet there are going to be a dozen articles, there's going to be a dozen videos, people are going to be talking about that topic. So I don't usually join in with that, but I think it's a great way to launch a channel, you know, to make sure that you're touching on things people are searching for. Um, but the specific question was what?
How do you pick your topics?
Yeah, so at this point, a lot of them are coming from just crazy, weird things I stumble upon. So I'll be reading a book about language, and it'll talk about patience and what types of animals have the most patience. Not patience like a doctor's patience, patience like I'm willing to wait, you know. And all of a sudden I go, whoa, I want to do an episode on patience. What is it? What? There's got to be something there, and then I'll research into it and see. But it often just comes from a thought or weird perspective that I have or stumble upon in some book or when talking to some friend. A lot come from viewers too, especially some of the really great funny questions. I still want to do what's the heaviest color, you know. That came over Twitter one day, and I'm like, that sounds like nonsense. But going into why it doesn't make a lot of sense, or in what ways it might make sense, could be a really cool video.
Okay, we have another question from somebody watching who asks, where do you see the future of science communication going? Do you see it evolving more so online, in print, or a hybrid of both?
Yeah, a hybrid of both. I think it's going to be everywhere. There's the bar for creating videos. It's not a bar. It's more like the entrance into it is has a high learning curve because you've got to know how to create a video, light it, edit, use all these types of technologies. Whereas print or just writing on forums or writing on a blog is easier to jump into, and I think it's open to more people. So I think we're going to see a hybrid explosion from both, and it's going to be exciting, and hopefully it really helps increase science literacy amongst lots and lots of people who otherwise might think that science is boring or it sounds like homework, but actually find themselves going, but I do want to know why the sky is blue, or I do want to hear this funny joke about why the sky is blue that I can then tell my friends that accidentally teaches me a little bit about scientific processes. And I think we're just going to see that permeate the society more and more.
Okay. Another question is, have you ever been criticized fairly or unfairly that your videos are too certain about the information it's disseminating?
Yeah, that's a good question. Because a lot of the things I cover are not things that we're certain about, right? Why do we kiss? We don't know. There isn't an experiment we could build that we could then do and learn, yes, it seems very likely that we kiss for this reason. A lot of that stuff is evolutionary psychology. A lot of it is less about, this is why we kiss, but instead, these are some different theories about why we kiss and why kissing is unique and important and what it's really about. So, it's important to make sure that people go off and read on their own and see how many different theories are out there and what makes a theory good versus not good. So I always include a list of all the sources that I use in every episode. My video descriptions are incredibly long because they're full of all the sites that I use. And so, yeah, I think that's a really good point to make because often people talk about fact-checking, and I say, oh, yeah, definitely. But for the most part, a lot of what I'm saying is reporting what others have said and theorized. So yeah.
So do you often get pushback from the scientific community or the public in general saying, no, this isn't right, or we didn't like how you said this in your video?
No, I never have. I think that trying to blend comedy with science can be tough because you want to be entertaining, but you also need to be truthful. And it can overwhelm you. Just trying to edit a video and realize, okay, well, if I show a picture of this dictionary, it needs to be the exact edition that this guy was using, or else that's going to be inaccurate. And you can kill yourself. And I think it's just gotten worse and worse as I become more and more obsessed with being exactly correct, having to make sure that, if I show an image I made in Photoshop, I've got to say that it's not to scale, or else people will say I'm wrong, because the people love doing that on the internet. But no, I can't even think of an exact example of anything that I said that I'm like, I wish I hadn't have said it that way. For the most part, people have been very, very excited about my episodes.
Okay. Another question that we have is, you briefly alluded to the demarcation problem in philosophy of science, i.e., how to tell the difference between science and pseudoscience. How do you approach that issue when dealing with issues of interest to the general public?
Yeah, that's a really tough one. I think it's just a matter of showing the difference over and over again, applying it to different topics, and people are going to have all kinds of different opinions about what is certain and what's not, and making sure that you can elucidate it in a very reasonable way is really important. I'm trying to think of specific examples, but it's funny how science and philosophy come together all the time, and oftentimes you'll notice that your audience is split. Half of them love the science, and half of them love the philosophy. I'm not a philosopher at all. I cover really, really basic ideas. But you have to keep in mind that, especially the younger people, this is some of the first times they've heard these ideas before. So keeping a very diverse audience happy is pretty difficult. But if you really get down to the core of a question, it always brings you down to some philosophical thing that has to be taken on faith, right? Like, why do magnets work? Well, because this. But why? Well, this. Why? The why game always brings you back down to, well, those are the laws of the universe that we have been given. The universe that we exist in works that way, and that's it. That's all I can really tell you. I heard the other day something that I think is really, really funny. If you go to Wikipedia and you click the first hyperlink on any random page, the first link that's not italicized, it will take you to, eventually, if you just keep clicking, you will always, actually like 94% of the time, you will go back to the philosophy page. If you get more and more general, more and more pulled back, you always wind up at philosophy. And there are even applets that will do this for you. You type in something, and it'll show you how it traces to the philosophy page on Wikipedia. Anyway, that's a good question, because I often find myself starting with a scientific question and then ending up with, well, but here's a bigger thought or metaphor that can come from it. And I think it's really cool, and I think it's helped to bring in a lot of people who otherwise would think that science is inapplicable to how they feel or what matters to them.
Okay. We have a question from an audience member who's Portuguese, and she said she wants to ask, in the video, what is the shortest poem, you end the video talking about a Portuguese poet, Fernando Pessoa, and his book, The Book of Disquiet. I was wondering if you read the entire thing and if you liked it.
Oh yeah, it's great. And again, that's a perfect example of blending art, culture, and philosophy with science. So, well, first of all, that video is obviously about language arts. Its title is literally "What's the shortest a poem can be," but that's my favorite type of stuff. I love Pessoa and Unamuno, and I often fight to make sure I get to include a lot more humanities type stuff in episodes, because there is a lot of physical science and there's not a lot of art and culture discussion on YouTube at the moment. So I love when I get a chance to do that. It's also part of my background. You know, my degrees are in neuropsychology and English literature. So whenever I get to bring in an author or get people excited about, oh wow, I thought poems were kind of dumb and didn't really have anything to do with helping us go to the moon. But, you know, it's kind of cool that humans make poems or whatever it is. You know, I love tying both of those worlds together.
Okay. Another question is, what are the topics that you won't touch? Science does have something to say about a topic such as the histocracy of a religious claim, but would that push too many viewers away?
No, I would never not do a topic. There's nothing that's off limits. I mean, if it's something that exists in this universe or can be talked about, I'll talk about it. And you know, the only reason I haven't talked about everything is that I only have so much time. And I also want to make sure that what I talk about interests everybody. And I think the challenge of not pushing buttons is a fantastic one, because you don't need to push a button to make a point. I did an episode on why animals don't have wheels. You know, why have we never found an animal that used wheels to locomote? They always use limbs, and their limbs are complicated. I mean, a bird wing, our legs, like, they're very hard to replicate, but a wheel is like the dumbest thing. Why don't animals use wheels? And in that episode, I never once say the word evolution. I talk a lot about selective pressures and all those other things, but I just knew that as soon as you say evolution, people drop out. But teaching them how to think rationally and scientifically doesn't require using words that will trigger them. Instead, teach them, and they'll accidentally find themselves going, "Oh wow, yeah, this totally makes sense now."
So how did you do that then if you need to avoid the term evolution so that people don't get turned off? How do you teach them without saying it or alluding to it too much?
Well, I mean, you still explain exactly what it is, but you just treat it in a much more like, well, obviously, you know, obviously, if there aren't a lot of flat areas on Earth, why would an animal use a wheel, right? And there would be no advantage to any animal that even had something that resembled a wheel. And if it was born with something that could roll, it would not be more beneficial to that organism. It wouldn't have more kids because of it, unless they had roads. And only one species has built roads and cooperated on things like that, and it's us. So, you know, you still totally get into the mechanism, but you just want to make sure that it's totally palatable, and you're creating a funnel that brings in the most people. And then they realize they're all in the same place, and they love it.
Okay. Next question is, what would you be doing if you weren't doing science videos?
I would probably be doing one of two things. I would either be doing live theater, which was my big passion in college. When I lived in Chicago, you know, my dream was to be on stage at Steppenwolf or to work for the Hypocrites. I mean, they're just great, such creative people. Or I would be doing more work in experimental psychology, and that's what I did. My honors project was on language and religion in the brain, and I would be doing more of that. But I'm a lot better at getting people excited about what scientists are doing than I am at being organized myself. So I'm trying to just point people out. You know, hey, look what these brilliant people are doing, and I would hope to be actually doing it, but I am entertaining and communicating instead.
Our next question from the audience has to do with something that you touched on a little bit before, but I think we should go back because I think it's a lot of people run into it. They ask, the process of putting together a narrative often involves following what turns out to be dead ends before you figure out what you do want to say. But have
Yeah.
there been times when a dead end for one story led you to another topic that you wanted to cover?
Oh yeah, totally. That happens every time. So I have a draft email that's just full of, oh man, this would be so cool, but I can't fit it into my episode. I'll do it later. So for instance, in What is Earth Worth, the episode that came out this morning, I talk about different things that Earth might be useful for. And of course I begin with some very, very, you know, scientific type questions about the elemental makeup of Earth and how many exoplanets we found. But then I start just throwing out ideas like, hey, maybe Earth could just be a zoo. And aliens don't need us, they don't need Earth, but it amuses them. So we could be a zoo. And then I found that human zoos are a real thing. I mean, there was a human from the Congo who was kept in a zoo in the Bronx in New York City as recently as 1906. So E equals MC squared has already been published, and we're still putting humans in zoos that look different. We put him in the monkey house, and after World War I broke out, he could not get back home, and he killed himself. That story is so powerful. I really wanted to include it, but I felt like it was too much of a tangent, and felt like it deserved its own episode. So the concept of how we treat each other and the history of human zoos, that's now listed off on my do that later. But yeah, I hit a lot of dead ends, and I hit a lot of ends that don't die. In fact, they thrive, and they thrive so much I can't include them. I have to cut them off and plant them somewhere else and wait to harvest the fruit in the next episode.
So how do you know when you have the right storyline of you have all the pieces that you need to get your point across? Is there a formula that you usually try to follow or points that you usually try to make sure that you cover, like the what, where, why?
Yeah, the biggest pressure is just when's the video, when should it come out? Um, and if it should come out really soon, then the script's going to have to be done. What I do initially is I write down the kind of story points, the facts I want to get to, and and I need to feel like I've got enough of them, and I also need to feel like I know what the title is going to be, and that I provide enough answers that people won't be entirely angry that the title was not answered. So that's kind of what drives me in writing the narrative. A lot of it is just what's cool and what do I think people haven't been talking about enough. We've all heard about such and such an experiment, but what's the next kind of layer that I can add, so that the next time people talk about it, people can say, oh, well, Vsauce actually took that a little further, or Vsauce took a different perspective on it.
Yeah, so it's really important to add to the conversation, not just regurgitate.
Exactly, exactly. And I think that's what makes the process a lot of work. I'm not just telling you, okay, so I Googled why do we sneeze, and here's what I found. If I did that, I'd be wasting your time because you could just go Google it yourself. Instead, I will take why do we sneeze, what's the shortest poem, and why are barns red, and I'll tie them all together and find a way to connect them all so that we realize, first of all, holy cow, the universe is awesome, but also, if you're interested in any of those, you'll want to watch the episode. And at the end of the day, I create a thing that's a little bit more unique than just, well, I Googled the answer for you, and this is what an itch is.
Yeah. Okay, another audience member has asked, do you try to balance gender issues in your videos? Do you try to interview women and minority scientists?
Yeah, for sure. For sure. And I think that really that deserves to be an entire show. And I think there are some shows like it that celebrate the life of scientists and working scientists. But it is so important to show how much variety there.
Hey, Michael. Are you still there? You froze up. Hey guys, I don't know if you can see what I'm seeing, but I have Michael froze up right now. I know he's on a Wi-Fi connection, so we'll see if he comes back. Okay guys, looks like we're having some technical difficulties. I'm gonna see if I can get Michael back into the call. Sorry about this, everybody. Let me see if I can get him back. Okay, if you're just joining us, we're having some technical difficulties with Michael Stevens of Vsauce. He is out of the video right now, but we're going to try to see if he can come back in before we wrap up here. We're getting near the end of our time. Okay, guys, looks like we're just having some technical difficulties. Sorry about this. I will see if we can stop the broadcast and get going again with Michael. If you hang around on the Sigma Xi Google page, Google Plus page, where you joined this Hangout, if I get him back within the next 10 minutes, I will be starting a new Hangout, and you can jump onto that one, hopefully with Michael in it. So sorry about this, but thank you for joining our Hangout. It was going pretty good until we had those technical problems, and please look for that new Hangout if we can start it. It'll be the next 10 minutes if we can. Thank you.